What?
What?
Just please.
Just please.
Sir,
Please,
please.
sir. Yes,
Just
speak.
Let me. We're American journalists.
You told me that already.
Okay. We work for Reuters.
Reuters doesn't sound American.
Okay, it's a news agency.
I know what Reuters is.
Sir. Okay. I'm just saying.
Just saying, just what?
We're American. Okay.
Okay. What kind of American are you?
Well, that seemed a bit extreme. Yeah, buddy. So things are changing in America. And I know that this is supposed to be about retirement and living abroad and all that kind of stuff. And although I am living abroad, I am not, what would be the word, oblivious to what's happening in the world and what's happening back at home. And there's a lot that one could say about what's going on. You've seen it, but there is one thing that has come up that I don't think has gotten as much attention as perhaps it should. It's constant. I want to just go ahead and share that with you. I'm going to move me over and bring that in because, like I said, I don't know if you've seen this before already. It is just something that has come out in the past week or so. I saw it and I thought I'd bring it out, but then I thought, no, I don't want to do that. But you know, I gotta I just gotta let it out, right? You just gotta let it out. So, countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence. Well, now that sounds like something that should be done, right? But there's something about the verbiage, the wording that is used in this document. Now, this is something called, I think it's a SPSM or something like that. What is it? Yeah, NSPM number 7. That's NSPM 7. And you can look this up if you want. As a matter of fact, what I'm sharing with you, this is actually from the White House website. They put this stuff out, whether it's executive orders or anything that the president signs and a lot of other stuff. But this is like it's like an inner office memorandum for the federal government. And so they take this stuff serious. I don't know if what type of work setting you are involved in or have been involved in the past. But if you get an inner office memorandum from the higher ups, you darn well better take that serious because they're saying that, hey, this is what we're doing going forward. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole thing with you. I just want to share a little part of it because, like I said, the wording that they're using, it can be problematic for you if you don't understand what they have done here. So I'm just going to share this one little paragraph with you, and I won't even go into this whole thing. We'll just talk about what we're looking at right here, where it says that there are common recurrent motivations and indicia, which is basically a fancy word or another way of saying indicators, uniting this pattern of violent and terroristic activities under the umbrella of self-described anti-fascism. Now, we know what fascism is, and we don't want that. And so we are generally anti-fascist because, well, that's what they did over in Italy back in like the 30s and 40s with whatever that guy was that they hanged, at the end of his. I don't know why why these dictators all go down the same road. It's like I said on another video, it is as if they have no idea what has happened to people like that in the past. And so we are all wanting to not be fascist or anti-fascism. But what they are doing is, as you're going to see as I go through this, is that they are taking this Antifa thing and they're going to hang that Antifa thing on a bunch of other people. I won't say everybody. And so you're going to have to watch what you do, what you say, and what you think. And you'll see that as I go on here. These movements portray foundational American principles, support for law enforcement and border control as fascists to justify and encourage acts of violent revolution. Now, we know that the Antifa people, they come out every chance they get and throw bricks through windows and just act a plain fool, right? And nobody in their right mind wants to be a part of that. And I would say to you, if you're thinking about joining up with that, you might want to think twice. This anti-fascist law has become the organizing rally cry used by domestic terrorists to wage a violent assault against democratic institutions, constitutional rights, and fundamental American liberties. Now, we all want fundamental American liberties is if we can just define American, because, and you're going to see why I say that in just a second. We all want to preserve and protect our constitutional rights, although we know that in the past year or so, and certainly in the past 7, 8, or 9 months, our constitutional rights have been, well, sort of rolled back, for lack of better words. Common threads animating this violent conduct include, now this is where you need to be careful because this is what they put in here, anti-Americanism. Now think about that. Anti-Americanism. It makes me think back to, like, I guess the early 2000s, late 90s, when I lived in Atlanta. And in Atlanta, there's, talk radio back in the 90s was really, really big because there wasn't like the internet the way we have now. Internet, I think, just rolled out in like 94 to the public. So talk radio was a big thing. And back then in conservative talk radio, they would talk about being un-American. Well, un-American and anti-American is a very subjective term that you or I could use and mean completely different things. So anti-American, and that's why I ran that clip in the beginning that said, from that movie clip or that movie Civil War, where the guy asked, what kind of American are you? Because the guy was saying, hey, we're just journalists. We work for Reuters and we're going to Charlottesville. And we're American. And the guys are going, well, what kind of American are you? I mean, are you the right kind of American? Because if you're not the right kind of American, under this interoffice memorandum, we'll just call it, you might be a problem. You're certainly going to have a problem if you're not the right kind. And it goes on to say, after it talks about whether or not you're anti-American, it says anti-capitalism. Well, now, I'm a capitalist because I believe I need to make a little money here and there. And you probably are too, just because you go to work every day and pay your bills and that kind of thing. But how are they defining capitalism? Are they using the classical term of capitalism? Are they using, come on, people. And then the third one, anti-Christianity. Now, how is that protecting our constitutional rights? Because I think somewhere in the Constitution, and I don't know the words verbatim, but it says something like the United States Congress shall pass no law that, upholds or supports or endorses any kind of religion. But here they're saying that you could be a terrorist if you show any of these indicators in your behavior. One is that you're anti-American. Two is that you're anti-capitalism, and that you're anti-Christian. Now, I'm not a Christian, but I could be a problem. I believe the Bible, but I know that Christianity doesn't because, well, they don't even follow it. They just say, well, hey, we got these 10 commandments. We'll do them. Maybe we won't. Like, for instance, what is it? The second commandment says that, you won't have idols and all that kind of stuff. But if you're Christian, you wear idols. I mean, you have the cross around your neck. That would be an idol. You have a statue of Mary or Joseph or whatever and all that kind of stuff in your church. Those are idols. That's not what the Bible says you're supposed to do, but that is what Christianity says you're supposed to do. Christianity also says that you are not supposed to observe the Sabbath, because back in, I think it was 324 AD, at the meeting of, starts with an L. I can't think of it, but under the Roman Catholic Church, they said that we are not going to anymore observe the Sabbath, which is the fourth commandment, right? The fourth commandment says to remember the Sabbath day and to keep it holy. But under Christianity, they say, well, we are going to worship, because they were Roman and still are. And they say, well, you know what? We are Roman and we worship the sun, and we don't want to give that up. We're going to kind of mesh all this stuff together. And so what we're going to do is we're going to move the Sabbath to the Lord's day, because that's what they call the sun god, the Lord. And they say, well, what we're going to do is we're going to worship the Lord, and we're going to keep that going, and we're going to do it on Sunday. That's why it's called Sunday. And the Sabbath day, which is what we know now as Saturday, well, we're just going to ignore that all. So all of that stuff. And so if you observe the Bible, or if you're Hindu, if you are Buddhist, well, Buddhism really isn't a religion. It's more of a philosophy. If you are, if you're Arab and you are, what are they, Muslim or whatever, none of that stuff is allowed anymore, because you could be a terrorist. just based on this inner office memorandum. If you support the overthrow of the United States government, now the founding fathers said that if the government becomes tyrannical, then you need to support the overthrow of the government. Now, extremism on migration. Okay, there could be some extreme migration, but how do we how do we define extremism? Extremism on race. Well, I don't know if you noticed, but I am what some people would call a black man. I don't think I'm black. I mean, I'm something else, but we won't get into that. But extremism on race. Well, most so-called black people would say that, you know what, we deserve reparations. Now, however it's going to come about, I don't know, but that could be considered extreme. And so if you're extreme, then you could be a terrorist. Kind of like, if are you smarter than a fifth grader? Because you could be a terrorist. Extremism on when it comes to gender. Now, I don't agree with all the gender bending and all that kind of stuff. And there's 137 genders, there's one and there's two as far as I'm concerned. But if you want to believe that and you want to think that, if that's the life you want to live, go right ahead, live your life. I am all for letting you live your life, as long as you let me live mine. But based on this inner office memorandum, NSPM number 7, you can't just live your life. I can't just live mine anymore. And hostility toward those who hold traditional American views on family. Traditional American views. Traditional American views. Now, that sounds really good. The problem is, who gets to define it? We'll go on. Hostility toward those who hold, those who hold traditional American views on family, religion, morality. Now, morality. That's another one. See, morality is something that changes from time to time. Morality isn't, what you see as moral today wasn't moral 30, 50, 100 years ago. And it won't be considered morality or moral 30, 50, 100 years from now. It changes. That's why I like the Bible as opposed to what happened to the Bible when the Greeks got their hand on it. Because the Greeks, when they got, you know how they say the Bible is written in Greek and in Latin and all that kind of stuff. Well, Latin when the Romans got it, and then Greek when the Greeks got it. But either way, it was originally written in Hebrew. But the Hebrews, they didn't have morals. The Greeks had morals, and so they inserted morality into what they called Christianity. And if you read the Bible in the book of Acts, it tells you that they were first called Christians in Antioch. Antioch is in Greece, if you didn't know. But morality, that thing's all over the place. They didn't have morality. They had law. And so if you just put down the law and abide by the law, if we could just do that, we wouldn't need to say, traditional American morality. American morality. American morals today is not the same as it was 10 years ago, 20, 50, 100 years ago. And it won't be the same tomorrow because morals continue to change. I just wanted to bring this out because here's the thing. You're going to run across a situation where someone's going to come up and ask you that question.
Okay. What kind of American are you?
Yeah. So what kind of American are you? And based on that, I would say, it might be time for you to get out. Yeah. So we're right back to retired expat and doing the whole thing of getting out of the U.S. And listen, I didn't leave the U.S. because of the current administration. My bags were figuratively packed many years prior to my actually leaving the U.S. because I knew that I wanted to leave for personal reasons, but it had nothing to do with what's going on now. Although what's going on right now is kind of scary. And I say that because, okay, let's think about this. This could lead to a situation where you could have Americans spying on American. Pick up the phone, give someone a call. Let me take this thing off. Pick up the phone, give someone a call, whoever it is, the higher ups, the powers that be, whomever. Hey, John Doe over there, they're acting un-American. They're not practicing Christianity. I'm not sure about their morals. You know what that reminds me of? Remember, or you're not old enough to remember, but because you'd have to be nearly 100 years old. But think back in your history when you studied Nazi Germany. You know what they had? They had people who would actually do that. Remember that movie, Sound of Music? toward the end of the movie, the family was trying to escape, and they were on the rooftop. And the oldest girl, she had this guy that she liked. You know, they were like teenagers, I guess, right? And the boy, he saw that they were leaving, and he blew his whistle. You know what he was wearing? He was wearing a brown shirt. He was wearing a brown shirt because he was part of the Nazi brown shirt organization where they adopted, you know, or conscripted, and probably had a bunch to volunteer too. There's a bird hanging out. These birds are always hanging out on my banner, so I hope they don't poop out there. Anyway, he blew the whistle to let everybody else know that this family was escaping. That's the same thing that's going to happen in the U.S. And it didn't just happen in Nazi Germany. It happened where else? East Germany. What they call them? The Stasi, S-T-A-S-I, I think is how you'll spell it. But if you look up Stasi, S-T-A-S-I, there's like a long German word, and I don't speak German, so I'm not going to even make a mess of it. But there's a long German word that they use, but we just say the Stasi. And what the Stasi would do is that they would actually spy on people. They would take notes, and you would see him on the dark street, the guy in his with his hat on and his trench coat, and he's writing up whatever you're doing. And kind of like these people here, you'll be sitting there afraid, wondering who's looking, who's lurking, who's watching today, who's recording what you're doing with your phone, and then sending it to, I don't know, whomever. I mean, I think they have a new Trump's coming up with his rapid response force or whatever. I don't know who it's going to be, but it's in the 50s and 60s. COINTELPRO. Now, COINTELPRO, the FBI had actually melanated people in spying on melanated people. Now, you would think that particularly in the 50s and 60s, this wouldn't happen, but I mean, because of all the oppression that was going on with the so-called black people anyway. So you would think that they would all be like, working together to get out of what was then a really bad situation. But no, there's always someone. And I don't care who you are, where you are, if you think you're safe, you're not, because you don't really know what your neighbor's thinking. I mean, people, they give you, when you meet people, they don't really tell you who they are. What they kind of give you is this personality that or this character that they want you to know. But what's happening deep down inside, you don't always know. And so you're going to end up in a situation where in America, you're not going to feel like you can trust your neighbor anymore, because you're going to hear that, oh, Bob turned in Jerome and Steve turned in Mary, and you know what I mean? People are calling up and saying they're not this, or they're not really American. And although this un-American thing and all of these things, these terms have been around for a long time, I don't know that I've ever seen a situation where the federal or the executive office of the federal government has come along and put it in writing and said that if you think this way, you might be a problem, because that's terroristic thought. And so we've come up with what we used to call the thought police, where if you think the wrong way, it's going to be a problem. People are going to shun you. People are going to want to, at this point, maybe even imprison you. And they're doing that. I mean, I'm kind of rambling here, but just the other day in Chicago, I think it was. Was it Chicago? At like 8, 9, 10, more like 10, 11 o'clock at night. I think of it. You're 11, 10, 11 o'clock at night. You got to go to work tomorrow. You got to get up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. So you might actually be in bed already. And all of a sudden, people are banging on your door, right? Come out. And you get up in your skivvies or your PJs and you answer the door, and they're dragging you and your wife and your children out of your apartment, pull you all downstairs, have you sit on the curb out there, put you in those those plastic zip ties so you're not free to move about, have you sit down there in your underwear, you, your wife, your children, 200 and some odd people, and then, okay, you can go, y'all can go now. You're not the ones we were looking for. What kind of world are we living in? Who made that phone call? Who called who? Who called whom? Whom called who? Whoever, right? Who made the phone call to make that happen? Because with this inter-office memorandum that they have come up with, this kind of thing can actually begin to occur. Stuff like this can cause significant harm to all of us. And so many of us are so willing to sit back and think that, well, this doesn't occur. This can't happen to me. Like I said, you look at me and you will call me what some would term as a black man or as an African American or whatever you want to call me. I don't believe in all that colorization thing, because that was all a social construct come up by some guy who just needed to create a social hierarchy by putting himself at the top and others at the bottom. We won't discuss that. But there are some people who are running around here who look like me as far as skin tone is concerned, and they're calling themselves FBAs. FBA. Foundational Black Americans. So you're foundational to what? A stolen country from people who 10.7 million people were destroyed so that this thing could be put in place. And you're foundational to that? And then you want to call yourself black? Do you know what that term means or why they gave you that particular moniker? Well, do you know why they call you black? Do you know what that actually means? Because I doubt that you do if you go back and look at what it really means. And then that you're American. It sounds to me like you're institutionalized. You've been here for so long that you think that this is your home. You know how some people, they might, some guy spends 20, 30 years in prison. And when you let him out, he doesn't feel comfortable being outside of the prison. He really wants to go back because that's what he feels like is home to him. Some people who call themselves FBA, they were running around for so long saying, well, this thing that ICE is doing, this can't happen to us because, well, we got the 14th Amendment to protect you. Let me tell you, if you weren't paying attention, they've already gotten rid of that. Okay, that doesn't exist anymore. So all of your rights, as a matter of fact, all of your constitutional rights can now be violated by the executive branch, especially with inter-office memorandums like this, based on what the Supreme Court has already said. This is a serious situation. We've got like the Stasi, the brown shirts, COINTELPRO, all rolled up into one and handed to you on a silver platter via the executive branch. And so, yes, I left the U.S. because I just didn't feel like, well, it was a place for me to live out the fourth quarter of my life. But now that I am gone and I am seeing all of this happen, I can't help but think that, man, I'm glad I got out of there when I did. So maybe it's time for you to start thinking and asking yourselves, is it time for you to get out now? Before someone comes and asks you, what kind of American are you? Are you practicing the right religion? Is it Christianity? Is it the right Christianity? Because if it ain't Christianity at all, we know it's the wrong one based on what they're telling us. Are you anti-American? Are you un-American? Because all my life you grew up, there were all kinds of people who were American. But now you got to be the right kind. Because if you're not the right kind, well, maybe you're watched. Maybe you're made to disappear. You're certainly going to be silenced. Maybe you should be asking yourself, is this the place where you want to raise your family? Is this the kind of environment that you were meant to live in? See, I don't believe that the Most High made me to live in an oppressive state. I just don't. I believe that he made the earth and it's all his and the fullness thereof, but he put us here to enjoy it freely. But there are certain people who have come along with laws and rules and regulations and guns to make you capitulate to certain rules, to say that, well, this really isn't yours, it's mine, and you can't enjoy it. And so I left for that reason and for other reasons, obviously, and we've talked about those. But I think that it's time for us all to start asking ourselves, is this the place to want to be? And then lastly, before I go, I know some of you are going to say, well, the Democratic Party is going to do this and the Democrat Party is going to do that. Well, based on Deuteronomy chapter 17, I don't vote, okay? Again, I'm not Christian. I believe the Bible, okay? And Deuteronomy 17 says I ain't supposed to be participating in that. But if the Democratic Party was of any use to you, they would have said something now. What you don't need is Bernie Sanders out holding more rallies. All that does for him is keep his name out there so he can keep getting reelected. But they hadn't done a thing. They are completely they're either ineffective or they're going along with the program. One of the two. Okay, but if they're ineffective, then you don't need to vote for them. And if they are just going along with the program, what will be the purpose of voting for them? Just vote for the people who are doing this. Because if you vote for the Democrats and they're going along with the program, you're voting for what you got. Either way, I just wanted to bring this to everybody's attention. Like I say, you've probably seen it already, but living outside of the country, I don't get the regular news every day. But I saw this and I haven't seen enough of it, and I thought that it's a discussion that you need to have with the people you love and care about, the people who live under your roof, because, yeah, this will affect us all. Anyway, that's all I got today, guys. Like I said, I just want to bring that to mind. Man, I have sat here and I haven't touched my coffee. That's good stuff. Second cup, by the way. First cup on my own. Second cup, I'll do that with you. Thanks for joining me, guys. Be blessed.